the first question we want to ask you is a guy who's doing all things draft and has many opinions on it. Who do you think is going to get picked too high, and who do you think is going to get picked too low?
Who do I think is going to get picked too high? Well, originally I thought it was Kawhi Leonard. He wasn't a guy that I was real high on. You know, I don't really see what he does at an elite level that makes him a top 10 pick, but now it seems like he could slide, and I actually have him going. I just updated my mock draft 2 minutes before I came on, and I actually have him going 14 now. So I have him sliding down to the late lottery, but so I guess at 14, you know, it's okay. He won't be going too high if he actually goes at that spot. Based on my mock draft, I'd probably say Bismack Biyombo. You know, he's a guy who NBA scouts have basically seen for one game and have deemed him a lottery pick, so I don't really understand it. Yeah, he's athletic, he's long, but he doesn't have a lot of skill. There's a lot of question marks about him. I'm not really sold on him. A guy that's probably not going as high as he should be is a guy I've been high on throughout the process, Donatas Matajunas, who is a 7-footer from Lithuania, and he's probably going to be a mid-first round pick. I think he has as much potential as almost anybody in this draft. He's a 7-footer that can do just about everything, can handle the ball, can shoot it, so I'm very high on him.
Can you talk a little bit about how difficult it's been for you just evaluating the entire process, knowing that there's so many players who haven't played enough or have played in circumstances, even like Fredette, who played 120 games, played in circumstances that are hardly, kind of very difficult to compare to NBA. Can you talk about what's been tricky for you and like how you, when you don't have as much to go on, what you look for?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's tough to compare a guy who's played one meaningful game to a guy who, like you said, who's played 80 or 100 meaningful games, and then you got to pick the games out of there that are meaningful. So, if a guy is from a mid-major school, so to speak, like a Jimmer Fredette, like a Andrew Goudelock, like a, Shelvin Mack, you got to look at the games that they played against other NBA prospects. So that's what I like to do to evaluate these guys myself. How did they do when they're matched up with other pro players, other NBA prospects, other first-round guys, other lottery guys? I don't care if you put up 40 points against Youngstown State. What does that prove? I mean, Corey Fisher put up 105 points in a summer league game once. What does that mean? That he's better than the guys that he played against? We already knew that. I want to see how these guys do in NBA-type circumstances or as close as we can get to it. So, I mean, the fact that Biyombo had a triple-double in the Hoop Summit game is certainly relevant. The fact that Enes Kanter had a big game in the Hoop Summit game last year is certainly relevant, but, some guys are going to have good games, some guys are going to have bad games. You have to look at consistency. You have to look at that they're consistently getting better. You have to look at they're consistently performing well. What do they do that translates to the NBA? Are they a pure point guard? Do they have good size at their position? Can they create their own shot? Things like that. So there's a lot of things that you got to evaluate, and it's not just from one game. You have to have a lot of games to see a guy. Sure, you could look at him in one game and say, this guy looks like a talent, but then you have to keep seeing him more. If he keeps doing those things, then certainly he's worth the pick.
I noticed that you reported something from an anonymous source about a Biyombo health red flag regarding his back, and
yeah.
I guess I have two questions. I just want your first take on that, and what do you think about that personally, and how should that influence his draft stock? And my second question is, how do you feel about the ethics of that? Because I think it's a little questionable. I'm not questioning your reporting, but I think it's hard to use an anonymous source for something like that when it could impact where he's selected and possibly millions of dollars for that particular kid. Do you think that most of the time reporting like that should require a name source, or do you think that this is just the way of things this day and age, that we should, if you trust the source well enough, just go with the anonymous? What do you think of that?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the second part first. I mean, people can, I guess, look at it however they want, but I'm not going to report something that serious unless I know for a fact that it's true. There's just no point in doing it otherwise because there would be nothing that I can gain out of it. I reported it because I got it from a source within the NBA in a front office, someone who got the physical, somebody whose team has deemed it a red flag, that has decided that it is an issue. And he told me, like I wrote in the article, you know, he doesn't know that every team is going to call it a red flag, but their medical staff for that team decided that it was. You know, I have the conversation on record if it came down to that. You know, I mean, I have it. But I can't say who the person is because that would get the person in trouble. They'd be fired, and you know they could get in trouble. So there's no point in me doing that. But you know, I'm not going to report it unless I knew for sure that it was accurate. As far as hurt, go ahead.
And I'm sure you are. I'm just wondering why you say that they would get fired. Is that because it's against league etiquette to talk about you know, that kind of issue, or if it's not your team? So it's an etiquette.
Oh, certainly
issue.
It's a private issue. Yeah.
Okay. And I guess
people
can't
really leak stuff like that to media, you know. But I mean, that's how we get our info. But you know, we can't say who it is because then I wouldn't get any info from that person again. So you know, I'm gonna get the person in trouble and lose the source. So what would be the point of me telling who the person is? That would just ruin everything on both ends.